So one of the things we kind of touched on with all these gingerbread houses is that, yeah, even after you make them, they don't last particularly long. Like Elf Bennett mentioned, they last about 3 to 4 weeks if they're just kind of sitting out in the open, which they would be as a house. You can do things to preserve them. They'll last 6 to 8 months if you put them in the freezer. And some people who like make a really nice gingerbread house and want to save it season to season, it can go up to a year or two if you protect it sufficiently. But the way they do it is like with this modeling lacquer, and they just like literally like coat it with, basically transparent glue. And I'll say this, I don't like the lacquer proposition because it basically immediately makes your house inedible. And once we do that, we might as well start using real building materials like wood and crap. Like,
I mean, they're already on a slippery slope with the world record, so.
Yeah, exactly. Slippery slope there. I want to maintain that our house is edible. So basically, we need to get that same protective effect on the gingerbread, but we have to do it with something else. So it doesn't mean we can't have protective coating. We just need to use some kind of candy to do it. And plenty of icings and candies can be used. They would coat it nicely, and they tend to last a lot longer than the gingerbread does. But we run into our second major problem, which is water. So as you may be aware, not sure if you guys know this, but every candy is heavily sugar-based. And the issue here is that sugar dissolves in water, and combined with the fact that our planet likes to occasionally drop a whole lot of that water on us from the sky. So we have this issue where if we have a heavy rainstorm, basically every component of our gingerbread house is dissolvable. So it's not really going to last for very, very long at all. It's just not going to last. So I almost gave up on this whole concept for a while, but it turns out there is one subset of candies that does not dissolve in water. And that's the most important candy of the whole goddamn thing, which is gumdrops and gummy candies.
They don't dissolve in water?
So I'm not sure about the pectin ones, but interestingly, gummy candies, and it's usually done with gummy bears, is where my research went through. But you can make gumdrops the same way, of course. So they still have plenty of sugar in them, but thanks to the gelatin, and this is why I'm not sure about the pectin-based ones, because of the gelatin, they'll actually hold together even when they're submerged in water. And this is because the gelatin binds the sugar tightly and creates on the outside of the candy kind of a semi-permeable membrane that won't allow sugar molecules to dissociate through that and go through that membrane to dissolve in the water.
I imagine it's probably pretty similar with the pectin.
Yeah, they serve similar functions. It would depend on the exact chemistry of how the pectin works.
Yeah.
Again, there's definitely a chance that they both work, but maybe it doesn't. I don't know. Funnily, it also does, the semi-permeable membrane does allow water back into the gummy through osmosis. And so if you have enough moisture, the gummies will actually expand in size. So one of the common, at-home kids experiments involves letting gummy bears sit in water overnight, and you'll see that after, the next day, those gummy bears will be like, twice the size of the original gummy bears next to them. And I'll say this expansion is actually kind of perfect, because one of the tricky parts of waterproofing a building is all the tiny gaps and connections between your components of the building. So, if you have, 2 flat sheets of whatever waterproof material, the gap between them, water can get right in there and sneak into the house. But if you have this expansion, once it starts to get wet, if you have, created this wall of gumdrops or gummy bears, it'll be almost self-sealing, and that once it gets wet, it'll start to expand, and it'll naturally close up all those little gaps to better protect all the gingerbread and stuff behind it. So basically, the outside of your house is going to have to be flat wall, and you can either, I guess it depends on how you want your house to look. You can decorate it yourself. Either gummy bears, gumdrops, or just like a sheet gummy material covering the entire face of that gingerbread will be the outside of your house. So this, I think, works. So we've got the outside of the house weather tight, but we still have to look at how long we can make our whole house last. Like I mentioned, the first good bit of news is that we've readily effectively sealed the outside of our gingerbread with that gummy wall, which protects us from the water, but also will help serve as like a sealant. So, you can get like that modeling lacquer from before. Like the one side of our gingerbread is sealed. The first bit of bad news is I think the interior side of the walls is trickier. I don't want gummy walls on the inside of my house because that seems like a nightmare. Like, if all your walls are just sticky and made of gummies, that's just terrible. And then the other way of preserving the gingerbread was by, like, keeping it in the freezer. And while we could theoretically keep our house, freezer cold, I don't really want to live in that nightmare either. So what do we do now with the interior walls, which are still, they're inside, but they're now, there's the exposed part of the wall. So my solution is to actually add a wall. So we're going to use a double layered wall with a layer of icing or more gummy in between them. So basically the outer wall of the gingerbread is going to be fully protected on both sides. And this is going to be like our structural piece. So this gingerbread is going to last quite a while, has the gummy on the outside, protects the inner one. And the inner wall is a more decorative wall. So it's going to last the 3 to 4 weeks. And this kind of gives you, and you'll just have to regularly replace your interior walls because they are eventually going to go bad and stale in a month or so. So if you want to keep eating them, you can do that. But it does give you the excuse to eat parts of your house without, actually destroying it. So you get the excuse to eat the part of the gingerbread. You get the excuse to decorate it all the time, which I think is really kind of in the spirit of things. So you have the interior walls are replaced, but the exterior structural stuff stays in place and is protected by gummies.
I like that. I like that the end point of my answer is, wow, we're gonna waste so much food. And Chris's was, wow, it's gonna be impossible to have enough gingerbread for all this. And Marcus' answer is, let's use twice as much gingerbread.
Yeah.
But wait, guys.
Yeah, well, that's why we all do different answers because none of these are all going to work together.
Right. I think what you meant to say was none of these are going to work. You had too many words in that sentence, sir.
That was a clip from Absurd Hypotheticals, the podcast where we answer dumb hypothetical questions. For the full episode, click on the link in the description.